And then, okay, going to the other stories is, I said Beau Demayo talking about he got receipts. him and Disney and Marvel about to have some epic battles in the future. I feel like either he's gonna bring a lawsuit against them, or he's gonna have to shut the fuck up. Because if he doesn't have receipts and he's just waging some social media campaign, then he's just gonna embarrass himself at the very end, because he was fired and there's a reason, but none of us know why.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you haven't figured this out, this is Blerdline News. There's a bunch of random stories that's going on, and I got my man Professor D to talk about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was like a explosion of industry related news and stories related to all the shows that we love and have talked about ad nauseum on this program.
So I would say, you know what, we can start with our good deposed scribe Beau Demayo. Him and Disney are still going back and forth about their situations. Long story medium. Beau Demayo was the showrunner for X-Men 97. He helped create it, fashion it, and everything else. He basically set the tone for the whole first season and season 2. While season 1 was completed, before it got released, but before it actually aired,
before they even started the marketing.
He was. They were just about to start the marketing, and he was unceremoniously dismissed. At first, there was no cause nor reason, just says that he is no longer with the project and won't be promoting. Later on, we found out that Disney, as quote-unquote wholesome family network as it is, found out that homeboy had OnlyFans. Beau Demayo is a gay black man, and you're an adult, you can do whatever you want. But under Disney, no, you can't.
Yeah, and to be fair, that is the policy for a lot of places.
100%.
Whether you hold especially a media, and that's whether you hold an executive position behind the scene, or you are out front, like Beau Demayo as the showrunner of X-Men 97, former showrunner of X-Men 97, or any of their shows. Disney and Marvel, the MCU, they are brands, so you have to comply with their brands. Now, in the summary of things, and this is coming out of reporting from Deadline by Dominic Patton, the quote, Beau Demayo says, "I have the receipts," decrying Marvel's quote, and I'm quoting this because this is from him, not my thoughts, or our thoughts. Marvel's criminal working conditions, and he's going to court to overturn the illegal Disney NDA. So this story has gone from he was fired. It was possibly a clear violation of their code of conduct, the way they expect creators or anyone that's employed by them to conduct themselves outside of even outside of the context of the company. To now we're talking Beau Demayo, and in this there's been a build up to this legal action, right? So he had previously stated that he hinted at that he wasn't fired for legitimate reasons, that his release was unceremoniously. And of course, with all the success of X-Men 97, the Emmy nominations that it's received, there's not been a single written or spoken negative criticism of that show. So much so that, and I haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet, but I saw that there was a joke between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman where he asked, "How did you feel the X-Men 97 is way more successful than any of the X-Men he said all of the X-Men movies." And Hugh Jackman, of course, gave a kind of cheeky response. But it's now to the point of legal action. So
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I mean, again, someone's Gina Gerson Gina Carano, who was on Mandalorian,
Yes.
as a pretty cool character, something that kind of fleshed out.
Absolutely.
And she's on 2 seasons. She's kind of essentially they're hinting at maybe making a spinoff with her or making her have a larger role. And then her off-screen shenanigans of her tweets and whatnot basically got her in hot water, and she got fired. And so she did violate Disney's policy. But Disney was like, "Yo, man, this is the policy. You violated, you gone." Yep. So she is also doing legal action, saying that she didn't think she deserved to get cut. Blah 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 blah. And so it is very interesting because, like, again, we've seen this happen before with people in the Disney sphere, and it's comedy that it keeps happening, and it goes on both sides, right? Like, if I'm Disney, I should know that someone of a high franchise IP, I should know all their ins and outs and everything they're doing, my due diligence. If I'm Disney, I would have already done that. If I'm Beau Demayo, why do you have an OnlyFans when you're about to do a family show? I'm just saying. Let's make smart choices. So
yeah, you're working on we can call it an animation. We can use all the jargon that pushes it away from being a cartoon, but you're working on something that will literally most likely be marketed to children. And so Disney you can say that one has nothing to do with the other, and that's true, but it's too close in proximity for Disney's comfort. And that's the whole point of branding and why brands just, rather than try to explain or put someone out there on a PR circuit, they would rather just cut their losses. It's the same thing that happened with our man Jonathan Majors.
Yeah. Yep. Same with him.
For the most part, things came out afterwards that suggest perhaps he wasn't the villain of this story, or as maybe it was just a strange set of circumstances in which he ended up taking the most of the heat.
Yep.
However, those nuances are never negotiated by the brand itself. They can't. They don't have the luxury because it's about their bottom line. It's about protecting the brand. And if that means letting go this individual that you've invested in and starting over, then as you see, they did. Bounced him out, brought in RDJ, just moved away from Kang the Conqueror, period. Yep. And focus now is on Dr. Doom. So,
yep.
We'll see what these receipts are that Beau Demayo has. I think Gina Carano, I think her thing is going to die in the dark because it's been some years now and that hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Mayo's situation is very interesting because if he's going this far, then that means he must have something that will potentially fall into his favor. I don't think it's just popping off at the
I agree too. And then and he, because he was also intimately involved with different properties in Marvel too, right? He had a pitch for Blade, he had a pitch for X-Men live action, he was working on some other things. So Disney kind of did the thing where they're like a catch-all. Well, you know what? He's a little bit on some weirdness. Plus, at the same time, he was also a bad worker or something like that, or had attitude problems or whatever lame thing that they always try to play with it. But either way, it's one of those stories that there's a pettiness that's going on right now and it's going back and forth. Speaking of petty, we have George R.R. Martin versus the writers of House of Dragon 2.
I like that segue. And really, honestly, I think his beef is more sort of pointing to the money people over at HBO, the people who are the suits. But he's been really he really was outspoken about some things from season 2. And those of you who follow our podcast, and listen to our review of House of the Dragon season 2. But you will know that we also had mixed to negative feelings about the creative direction or the structure and storytelling of season 2. But this is coming from the man himself. You know, when Martin speaks about these things, you can almost take it to the bank. It's like God speaking as far as the world of Ice and Fire is concerned, right? Because he created the story. These characters were from his mind, not from anyone else. And, you know, just an example of this, the deadline quote from him where, you know, he said, "I promise you some further thoughts about Blood and Cheese." And the whole thing about that storyline is that, so they're in his book, King Aegon and Helena have 3 children, not 2. They have the twins, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and who are 6 years old, and they have a younger boy named Maelor, who is 2. Now, when Blood and Cheese break in on Helena and the kids, they tell her they are debt collectors, come to exact revenge for the death of Prince Lucerys, a son for a son. As Helena has 2 sons, however, they demand that she choose which one should die. She resists and offers her own life instead, but the killers insist it has to be a son. If she does not name one, they will kill all 3 children. To save the life of the twins, Helena names Maelor, the youngest one, the 2-year-old. But Blood kills the older boy Jaehaerys instead, while Cheese tells little Maelor that his mother wanted him dead. Whether the boy is old enough to understand that is not at all certain. So this is from George R. R. Martin. So basically, what he's saying is, so in the show, there is no Maelor. There's only the twins. Both of them are younger than 6, or look younger than 6, and you can't know who's who, and Blood can't tell them apart. And so Helena is asked to reveal which one is the boy. And so the whole thing, I think, is that it's not that he's saying that is the incorrect way to go. But for me, having read it, I saw the point of having the 3 children and the way that played out. So Helena is completely traumatized after that. She can't even be in the same room with her youngest son because in her mind, he sees her as wanting him dead, you know? And so when you think about storytelling and what House of the Dragon removed in this situation is they removed the true tragedy of that whole scenario, the tragedy and the horror that was unleashed, whether knowingly or unknowingly, by Daemon and Rhaenyra. So, you know, and also there's a bookend to that story later, which, spoiler alert, is because Jaehaera will eventually marry Aegon III, who is Rhaenyra and Daemon's son, once and for all, reuniting the 2 branches of House Targaryen and ending the Black and Green conflict once and for all. But now, since this change has happened, you kind of have that path is a little more complicated to tell that story if that makes any sense. But
yeah,
that's just one example of the changes that are made that kind of wreck the point of the story.
Yeah, because now you're wondering, like, how are they going to get to that resolution, essentially?
Yeah, it's the same thing with the where he had a problem with the dragon being in the Vale, and Rhaena Targaryen having that storyline. In the book, it's a different character, and the dragon was in Dragonstone because dragons are not nomadic. They only travel far when they have a rider in his story, in his fictional story.
So they're breaking some of the rules that he had set.
They're breaking his mythology rules, and I think that's the reason why he's upset. And it doesn't make sense. We saw Rhaena struggling with the cold when she was chasing the dragon in that episode. His dragons prefer warm climates. That's why so many of them are at Dragonstone, because that's a freaking volcano with a castle carved into it.
Yep.
So they stick to that island because, as far as the histories of the story goes, there's only one volcano in Westeros, and that's Dragonstone. Otherwise, they would be heading towards Dorne or towards the east, where there are hotter climate areas that they can survive. But being in the Vale for his story and his mythology makes absolutely no sense. And also, Rhaena actually hatches a dragon after all the other dragons die, which is his way of hinting that despite it looking like the Targaryens are at their low point, defeated and possibly without dragons, there is literally, the dragon is named Morning. There is hope on the horizon, and this is represented through Rhaena Targaryen hatching that egg. So again, if you've read it, you wonder, how do they now get Rhaena to that point? Because that's an important image to lead the story on. The story. So
it's comedy because, like you said, there's a changing the story for the screen. Sure, you have to do it. Some things don't work, or it's too expensive. But then changing the mythos of the story, that's where you run into issues, because now you're changing the rules of the story. So then things that have been established be, hey man, you can only go between this point and this point. And if you go past that point, you're now breaking the story that was already told. So now you're doing your own story, which again, if you could pull it off, cool. But history has shown us very little people have been able to break an established mythos, the story, and add to it in a positive way. Usually turns out not so great.
Well, then it makes sense for the mythology as well.
Yeah.
So like that doesn't make sense for the mythology based on how he's grounded his dragons. If we're talking about Smough from Tolkien's world, who flew from one end of the world all the way to the Misty Mountains, it took up shop and killed the dwarves and stole their gold. Okay, if that was established, then yeah, you will have dragons in the Vale. But there's a reason why there's no history of a dragon in Winterfell, or when the stories about when the dragons go. Even Game of Thrones showed that when the dragons are in Winterfell, they're in the north, they're extremely uncomfortable, and it's not just because of the White Walkers or they sense the ice magic. It's because of the climate. It's cold. They are heat creatures. They love the heat. And so that's where I think a lot of showrunners, because, Rings of Power, they showed Orc's family. And I threw my hands in the air. I'm like, no, you are missing the point of orcs in Tolkien's mythology. They are ill-made, ill-begotten creatures, meaning they do not have families and familiar structures. Because of that, they feast on flesh. They are bottom feeders, and they are not to be sympathized, because they are a metaphor for unchecked, malicious, violent, corrupt evil that is unyielding and unremorseful. So when you show an orc who's got an orc wife and a little bitty orc creature baby, like you're in violation of the mythology, and you're missing the point.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that in both of those shows I can see where people, especially if you read the books, and even to George's point, he even said, there's one point where he was like, yo, if you've never read the book, probably didn't bother you, but if you did read the book, it's definitely going to bother you. So I think those are those little nuances that, like, it's interesting to see it, and I'm more curious to see. And instead of the showrunners kind of explaining their reasoning behind it, it's been more pettiness, kind of like in response, which is hilarious. And I'm like, I don't know if we really want to do that.
Yeah, and I think also with them, with House of the Dragon specifically, they ended the way they did, and now they're telling us we have to wait 2 years from the end of that. And I think that in and of itself is enough to make a person say, F you, I don't care. Especially if you read the book. Because if you read the book, you know where it's going, you know how it ends, you know that they're going to give you a version of that. So you have to then decide, do you even care about seeing the visualization of it? And some people will decide, I guarantee in these 2 years, no, they do not. They do not care, because that's the same thing that happened with Game of Thrones. At some point, people decided, I don't want to because it will spoil the book ending potentially, or I don't care because they've moved so far away from the mythology. That was the problem with those last few seasons. Jon Snow should have been dead 16 times over if it was following Martin's mythology.
Basically,
you do not stand in the middle of a freaking battlefield and not be hit by an arrow, or have mounted horses marching towards you, galloping down towards you, and you somehow survive. No, you're taking a maiming at the very least. Very least.
I mean, what's it called? He established you save a kid and you get your arm chopped off.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like and I get it. It's a business, so you have to switch up things to satisfy certain people. But there comes a point where, again, we know that you have to change things because the two mediums are different. The problem is, again, when you ship things and it changes the fundamental aspects of the mythology. Because when that happens, it's no longer the story. It is something else entirely.
Yeah. Totally true. Totally true. In happier news, we have some more cast announcements for Section 31, which is Michelle Yeoh's. It used to be a series. Now she's too big time, so they had to make a movie, which honestly probably will be a good thing, honestly. I think just giving them some more constraints will probably make the storytelling a lot tighter. One of the problems that these newer Star Trek shows have had is they kind of meander a bit, and they're not really sure what they're really doing. So Discovery definitely had that. Strange New Worlds got a lot better with it. So I'm actually excited about it because her character is super dope. The Section 31 is just a fun thing in Star Trek, and I'm glad they get to expand on it a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And I think that I'm happy that we got it, because this thing has been in developmental hell since before COVID. And I thought once COVID, because it was already being held up. And so when COVID hit, I was like, oh, it's dead. It's definitely not. They're definitely not making this. And then it was still on the docket for Paramount.
Yep.
And then the strikes happened. So I was like, oh, it's over. That is it. It is done. Guillotine has come down. Still survived. So essentially, Section 31, in my mind, is the cockroach of shows that won't die. That will not die. I mean, it's survived the nuclear fires of COVID. It survived the nuclear fires of not one, but two strikes that would impact it. And then what was and it survived the fact that Paramount is like up for sale and like all these other things. How is it that Star Trek Section 31, that's tied to no specific Star Trek story other than DS9 and the Next Generation?
Enterprise for mention.
Yeah, Enterprise for mention, yeah. But no specific character before now is tied to Section 31 in terms of someone that we know. They're Worf or Picard or Kirk or Spock. Like, none of them are tied to Section 31. They rumped up against Section 31, but they've never had a sustained involvement. So the fact that story survived all of these what would have been apocalypse for a lot of other shows is amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm glad that they cast Sam Richardson. He's going to be great next to Michelle Yeoh. I mean, if you've never seen Veep, he played a character, Richard Splett, who ends up being the person, the final president, the one who wins. And the irony is that Richard Splett is like supposed to be an idiot savant. So he's like super intelligent, got a bunch of degrees, super empathetic, the nicest person on the show, which if you've seen me, you know that is hard to be the nicest person on that show because everybody's bad. But he's a great actor and he's got great comedic timing. And so I think he's going to do well. The only person of the three that's announced is Amari Hardwick. I'm hoping that that's just, a role where he's like there for there one moment, gone the next, because that dude is wooden, and he's only cast because women like him. That's about it.
Yo, man, you need some sexy power. You need a little sexy power sometimes.
I guess so. In Star Trek, now it used to be we needed the intellect. Now everybody's trying to. Now we trying to cast all the hot folks. Have you seen the Strange New World cast? I'm like, gee, everybody's heard of that show.
Yeah. I like I said, I'm glad it kind of did survive all this because that was like my favorite character from Discovery by far. She was a straight up scene stealer at every scene that she was in.
Oh,
you can just tell she's having the time of her life the entire time, which is great. And that's one of my favorite things when I watch actors, when you could tell that they're having fun because it makes you have even more fun.
And she's a fan, and I think that's what you enjoy the most about Trek. If you are a Trekkie and you understand that it's more than the way Star Wars fans sort of wring their hands and complain about everything, things that are not even worthy of complaint. Trek is more like, if you like, there's a reason why all the actors who were ever involved with Star Trek, anytime one of the producers called them, yes, immediately, almost immediately, probably with the exception of Avery Brooks. And that whole scenario is a mystery. It's an urban legend as to what's the real deal with why Sisko, the actor who played Benjamin Sisko, to me, the greatest of all the Starfleet captains, why he won't return. But not to get too far into that, glad that Michelle Yeoh is finally going to get to do that. And I'm glad that she still decided to do it, which is my point about the fact that she's a fan, because they dropped the ball with that. Let's just be real. They wasted her time. They told her that she was coming. They were trying to write on scripts. And it just so happens that in the meantime, she was just doing everything. Like, no pun intended, everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, man. She did like three. She did 2 series, 3 movies, like
several movies, and maybe a couple more series that we weren't thinking of. She was in almost everything from the moment she stopped being in Star Trek, because that kind of reintroduced people to how cool she can be and how badass she is and how much of a great actress she is. And then from there, it was like she got the Everything movie. Then she was in The Witcher Blood Origins. And to be fair, she's the only reason why I would tell people to watch that. And I would say, don't even bother then. That's horrible. But she was in all these things.
Yeah, she's in American Born Chinese, which is on Disney Plus. She was on the Sunset. It was another Chinese or Taiwanese based show that was on Netflix, which was actually really cool because she got to use her real accent, her real like tongue, which was dope. Because she is Taiwanese and she speaks Taiwanese Cantonese, so you can see that was kind of cool. So yeah, she was on her grind. Like, and you're right, because she is a fan. It's probably the only reason why she's still around.
Yeah,
she said that was a long time ago, but you can tell that she actually likes the character. She loves Star Trek. So
she wanted to do it. She wanted to be there, and that's the story with a lot of Star Trek actors. That's why if you look at the credits, like people who were in Voyager are still directing episodes of Strange New Worlds, and and of this, and before it went off, Discovery and all because they love it as much as we do, and they just happen to get paid. So they are really winning. Where we're just like, I just love seeing these people on screen in space, boldly going where no person has ever gone before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's it for us. We're at 30 minutes. We're even telling ourselves we're going to cut it, but we wanted to rant on a couple of random things. The last thing I'll say is I, for some odd, strange reason, binge watched Star Wars Acolyte 1 through 7 episodes yesterday, just because I was cleaning and folding clothes and stuff like that. Wow, what a waste of budget! What a waste of budget! Like, man.
And it has nothing to do with any of those, what is it, verse things that we're covering the female witches.
This is all pure production, writing, and the craft of making a TV series. And they failed on every account. They had a solid cast. They had some interesting ideas, but they could not execute. The sound was bad. The color grading was bad. The direction was bad. The world felt small. Like, yeah,
the sets were. That's why I could not figure out, where did the money go? Where was the budget?
I don't know.
Did they use the budget on? Did they pay the actors extremely low?
I hope they paid the crew. Maybe the freaking space fight in the rings or whatever that was. Like, I don't know where the budget went, but
I forgot about that. You're talking about that one where Soul was chasing.
Yep. No reason.
Terrible. Like, that was terribly rendered. Like, it was horrible, and I couldn't understand why the little tree rat why he took him out of hype. I didn't get what was going on.
Yo.
I did not understand it. I'm not surprised the show was gone.
Failures in all levels. That's all I gotta say. Like, this is now to be put into the he who should not be named realm of.
Oh yeah, that Star Wars show that will never be named again.
Jeez. Star Wars the Forgotten. That's all we call that. But anyway, sorry. That's my. I just get that ran out before because I got a podcast so I can talk like that. All right, man. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Peace out.